And so it appears, as we move into the 70s, that we have learned something about ourselves that is large and dark and final. We, all of us, sitting here in our small comforts, worrying about inflation and schools and the coming of winter, preparing for a night at the theater or a short passage with the Knicks, getting our cars repaired, swapping small talk at lunch, making Christmas lists, marrying and divorcing, wrapped in ourselves and our banalities. All of us must sleep tonight in the knowledge that we share in mass murder. Can we look deep into those photographs by Ronald Harberly of the Cleveland Plain Dealer and deny what they tell us? That girl with straight-clipped bangs, she is about 10 and terrified, hiding behind a shrunken woman. In a moment, she is to be liberated forever by the guns of Americans. We don't know her name. We don't know the names of those in the other photographs, piled in a field like cordwood. And we'll never know. They were slopeheads. Therefore, we can kill them. One justification for the destruction of Song Mi is that the villagers there were unfriendly and had been in the control of the Viet Cong since the 1940s. But we must remember several things. The Viet Cong were the only government that many of those places had had since the Japanese left after the Second World War. And more importantly, the Viet Cong are Vietnamese before anything else. If the U.S. were to break into civil war and 6 million Chinese troops arrived to fight for one side, using the same ratio as that of American troops to South Vietnamese citizens, we would be unlikely to be friendly, especially if they seemed to spend much of their time mortaring, shooting, and burning. You cannot expect people to believe your noble intentions when you shoot 10-year-old girls to death. But these things happen in war. Yes. And when a stick-up man shoots a grocer in the belly, we could say that those things happen in armed robberies. A guy blows his wife's head off with a shotgun. Those things happen in domestic quarrels. A girl is raped and strangled. Those things happen in an urban society. Literature was one of those things that happened in a war, and we hung people for it. The Army will court-martial a number of people over what happened that March day at Song Mi. The defense will be the old one. They were acting under orders. But there will be other issues involved in that trial. Would they have killed those people so easily if they had been in Sweden? If you continually call a man a gook or Charlie or slopehead, he is on his way to becoming an object and not a subject. He experiences no terror, no exaltation, no love. He doesn't sweat, feel hunger, suffer remorse. He doesn't care about seasons or children or home. He is an object who lives in a hooch. He is a kike, a mick, a guinea, a nigger, a Polak, a spick. But he isn't human, and you are free to obliterate him. There is another issue. Can a man legitimately defend himself by saying he was under orders if the entire action, in this case the war itself, is illegitimate? We seem to forget that the war in Vietnam was never declared and is clearly illegal. We We have something in this country called the Constitution, which reserves to Congress the right to declare war. Our contract with the President uses the Constitution as its basis. Every day in Vietnam, the terms of that contract are being violated. But even worse, the contract we have with each other is being violated when something like Song Mi happens and we do not rise in outrage. This country was supposed to have a kind of fundamental decency at its heart, but we seem to have become at least as calloused as the Germans did. It is easier to forget it all, or blame David Brinkley for inventing it, or claim that the liberal communists, to borrow the phrase of the wife of our Attorney General, were behind its exposure, or simply follow the example of the President and sit down and watch a football game. But I hope that after this is over, we can remember some of the words of Sergeant Michael Bernhardt, who was at Song Mi. We met no resistance, he said, and I only saw 3 captured weapons. We had no casualties. It was just like any other Vietnamese village, old papasans, women, and kids. As a matter of fact, I don't remember seeing one military-age male in the entire place, dead or alive. The only prisoner I saw was in his 50s. Were the dead members of the Viet Cong, the sergeant was asked? He answered, some of the people were not old enough to walk yet, so I couldn't see how they could be Viet Cong. But the government shouldn't get away with sentencing a handful of men and letting the others escape. The others are not those baffled young men who were conscripted and sent to Asia. The others include everybody who had anything to do with sending them there. Lyndon Johnson, Hubert Humphrey, Walt Rostow, the Bundys, and all the rest. Democrats and Republicans from 3 different administrations and 7 Congresses. Throw in the people who make napalm, M16s, and the other instruments of liberation, and we might have a trial that is logical and goes after the real villains. I know just the place to hold it. It's a town called Nuremberg.